Hello and welcome to our CHEEKIBREEKI podcast. Our guest today is an author, Celeste Richmond. Hello, how are you?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm great. How are you?
I'm good too. Thank you for coming here. Could you tell us how you started in writing and what are you working on at the moment?
Well, I started when I was 19, when I suddenly got this idea for a story. And for about 2 weeks, I didn't know what to do with it and if I should write it or if I decide to write it, how. And then I decided, well, let's try. Why not? So I started writing, and then it got bigger and bigger. And I realized that now the size of my writing looks like a book. And so it was, for a while, it was a hobby for me until I realized that I want to do this professionally and make it my career. At the moment, I'm editing my first three books, which I plan to publish. And in the meantime, I also write for online motoring community called Drive Stripe.
So I guess for majority of us writing, I mean at least when it comes to writing stories, is kind of a school activity. And we don't usually do it as soon as we get out of school or university doors. A lot of people have stories in them, but not a lot of have this discipline, desire, or even ability to sit down and write them. As I guess this is what distinguishes authors from the rest is discipline. Do you agree?
Yeah, certainly. I agree. When it comes to writing, it all comes down to ability, language proficiency, time, of course, and discipline. How well you can manage your time, how well you can stick to your writing goals and schedule, and just find time every day to sit down and write. It doesn't have to be 4 hours or 5 hours. Nobody has this kind of time unless they do it, full time. So just 40 minutes is enough, but just try to do it every day because practice makes perfect, of course.
What is the most difficult thing in writing?
There are a lot of difficult things in writing. First of all, is getting ideas because, it's easy to get an idea, but then if you can't really develop this idea into anything, you can't really make a story out of it to come up with characters, setting, action, and then conflict, and then resolution, you will not get far with your story. Then, of course, another difficulty is in writing itself, because sometimes you get an idea, but you sit down to write it and you just don't have the words for it. You don't know how to express your idea. And then, of course, there is time, because writing is extremely time consuming. As a writer, and I think a lot of writers would agree with me, your writing never feels perfect. You look at it once and you feel like it's finished. But then 2 weeks later, you look at it again and you find 100 things you want to change and improve. And this just, it never ends. So at some moment, you have to stop yourself, pull yourself back and say, like, no, this is the final product and I should keep it. Or it would just go for years and years. So I think for me personally, like this need to stop editing, this would be the most difficult part when it comes to writing.
Talking about discipline, is discipline enough? I feel like it isn't. I mean, why would so many people force themselves to open their Word document, but then they stare at a blank page for hours on end, even though they have ideas?
Yeah, sure, discipline is not enough. There are a lot of things which come into play when it comes to writing. And this thing which you described, when a person has an idea and then they sit down to write it, but they can't, so they just stare at this blank page for hours. This is called writer's block.
Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, sure. A lot of times you want to write, you have an idea, you want to write, but then you get to it and you don't have the words, or the words you have, they don't have the same capacity and they can't really describe what you want to describe. And it's very frustrating feeling because you want to do this. You have something to write about, but you just can't. You don't know where to start, how to proceed. You don't know anything. And it's very frustrating feeling. And well, for those who have never experienced it, I would describe it as a burnout. When you feel
Yeah.
tired, So, well, if you experience writer's block, what I would say, it's worth doing. Just take a step back and then continue writing some other day, I think. Just recharge your batteries, find new sources of inspiration, go for a walk, just do something else, not writing. And then after a while, you will find the words, and this writer's block will disappear.
Do you think there are more opportunities for writers these days? After all, not all books that are written get to print.
Certainly, there are more opportunities for everyone, I guess, all thanks to the internet. As for writers, I'd say yes, there are tons of opportunities out there. First of all, if you want to publish your book, yes, not all books get printed, and that's a fact. But if you want to get into publishing, you can go traditional way and find an agent who will sell your book to a publisher, or you can self-publish, which wasn't possible before. You can put your book on Amazon or on one of countless platforms for writers online and just post your book chapter by chapter for everyone to read for free. Then, of course, there is blogging, there is freelance writing. There are tons of opportunities out there. So if you're complaining about lack of opportunities, but you want to get into writing, there is no excuse for you, really, because there are tons of things you can do when it comes to writing now.
In my previous question, I mentioned that not all stories that are written will later be printed. We won't see them as books. And how does this process work? What do authors do after they finish writing their book?
Well, I guess what they do all depends on their goals, because some people just write it for themselves, for their family or close friends. So after they finish the book just stays on the hard drive of their computer. If they want to publish it, they can go traditional route, as I mentioned, find an agent who will, if they like the story, if they can find the market for it, they will sell it to a publisher. And publisher will proceed with publishing, editing, and then marketing of your book. Then you can also self-publish. In this case, you can either do it yourself or hire a professional to edit the cover for you, proofread your book, then do marketing and all of that stuff. You can also pay for to have like printed copies, or you can put your book on Amazon and sell it as an ebook. And then there is also, as I mentioned also earlier, writing platforms online where you post your book chapter by chapter and everyone can read it for free. So these are, I think, the main ways of how you can get your book published.
Talking about agents, they don't accept all stories, which means a lot of books get rejected. Do you have any advice for other writers out there who are going through rejection or querying process now?
Well, yes, a lot of stories get rejected. And for those who are querying right now, I would say make your work as good as it can be, and don't take rejection personally, and keep doing it. No matter how many rejection letters you get, you should believe in your work and continue. Because what a lot of people don't really understand about rejections, and a lot of writers actually looking for some magic formula of how to get your book published and how to get your story noticed. And the truth is, I feel like there is no formula. There is no formula, really, when it comes to any industry out there. And what a lot of people don't understand about rejection is that they feel that agents act like gatekeepers and they don't pick up their work just because they want to reject them, which is ridiculous and contradictory to what agent actually does. No agent wants to reject your work, or you for that matter. Every agent wants to find the next big story. They want to find the next big thing. Just because they rejected your story, it doesn't mean that your story is bad, because after all, it's a matter of personal taste. And if they rejected your story, it might be because they actually liked it, but they don't see the market for it. So they don't actually see the opportunity to sell it. That's why it got rejected. So, and a lot of people, a lot of authors actually take rejection personally, as if they got rejected. But it's not true. So don't take it personally.
What are other projects you're working on?
Well, as mentioned, I write for Drive Tribe, which is an online motoring community founded by former Top Gear presenters. And there I have a community which is called a tribe on a platform where I write fun, easy to read articles, lists, kind of things.
So, talking about these easy to read articles, with the rise of freelance writing, blogging, and all of that, a lot of people, in order to attract attention, which is extremely hard, use clickbait. For those who don't know about clickbait, it's basically a technique designed to entice a user into clicking on the story or an image or a video. While it certainly works, it also has its downsides. As I see it, clickbait soon becomes repetitive and people get tired of it. Do you agree with me? What do you think of clickbait?
Yeah, I find clickbait very, very annoying. Titles like I did this and you won't believe what happened, they become very boring very quickly. And then there are titles like if you like this movie, there are 5 movies you will also enjoy. And in my mind, titles like this are sort of okay because with titles like this, you sort of get what you were promised. You get a list of 5 movies you will enjoy. And I will admit I use titles like this for my articles, which are basically mostly lists of things. And I think, why did I use such titles? Because I think when it comes to entertainment and just fun articles, it is okay to use titles like this as long as they aren't misleading or fake. But when it comes to serious news, serious issues, these titles are just not appropriate and should not be used. So I guess it all comes down to your topic, but and the issue you're writing about. But clickbait, as I mentioned in the beginning, like you won't believe what happens. This is just no. This is a big no. And people actually now, well, at first, maybe a lot of people would click on the article, but now everyone knows what clickbait is. Well, most people do, and they know that usually what's promised there, it's not worth it. So, yeah, so a lot of people just don't click on these articles anymore. And if the source is, if the source has too many articles, which titles are open clickbait, well, the source actually loses its credibility to a degree.
Well, that was fascinating. It was a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
And thank you very much for coming.
And thanks for having me.
To all our viewers, don't forget to subscribe
And like the video.